reflecting light, like the sea on a winter night. Two satellites, ooh. Words whispered, holding out our hand. You breathe life into barren lands. Oh, from where I stand, I believe we're reflecting light, like the sea on a winter night. Oh, honey, we're reflecting light, like the sea on a winter night. Two satellites. Oh, how you catch the light right before my eyes. You captivate my mind. Starlight of my life. We're reflecting light, like the sea on a winter night. Oh, honey, we're reflecting light, like the sea on a winter night. Two satellites, ooh.
Hi everyone, we are 4/5 of the Thurmans. We are excited to welcome you to the live stream for Red Door Church this morning. I'm Brittany, this is my husband Zach, and then we've got Mac, Peter, and Frank.
We just wanted to let you know about a few things going on this summer. The first is the Flubs Wednesdays. I think we all remember that. This year we're trying to do it again, 7 p.m. On Wednesday evenings. It's a good way to see people outside, and as a doctor I approve of outside gatherings so long as you can remain, keep some distance, and
Another thing that we want you guys to be aware of is that we are celebrating Christmas in July. So this is a really fun opportunity. We have renovations at base camp are nearing completion. And so now we need your help kind of getting things ready and filling those spaces. So if you go to the Red Door website, you can find different items that Red Door needs purchased. And you can buy those things and gift those to Red Door, to help us fill the space.
Think wedding registry meets building registry.
Okay.
And I'm excited to announce the Polypoikilos project. Try saying that a couple times fast. It's the Be the Bridge study. It's going to begin on Friday. It's going to be a 9-week study that's going to meet via Zoom from 2 to 3 p.m. Again on Friday afternoons. And the idea is that we're sort of educating ourselves and meeting together to talk about racial unity. Obviously a very important topic, not just to talk about, but to enact. Let us not be people who just have good words, but love with actions and in truth.
Hello, Red Door.
Hello. Good morning from the treehouse. We could not do this outside in the park, so we thought, let's try to do the best that we can. It is a freezing 92 degrees and humid here, and we are having a blast. This morning from the treehouse, we will be focusing on what does it mean to be a child of God, and we thought, man, it would be really cool to have some children sing that. So we have Riley, and we have Gracie, and we have Selah. Ladies, are we ready to sing No Longer Slaves?
Yes.
All right, 1, 2, 3. You unravel me
With a melody.
You surround
me with a song
of deliverance.
from my enemies.
Until all my fears are gone. Chorus. I'm no longer a slave.
I am a child of God.
I'm no longer a
slave to fear.
for
I
I
am a child
of God.
From my mother's womb, you have chosen me. Love has called my name. I've been born again into your family. Your blood flows through my veins.
No longer slaves.
I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God.
I'm no longer
a slave to fear.
for
I am a child of God. Whoa,
You split the sea?
You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My feet are drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and sing. I am a child of God.
Do it again, we all sing.
You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears are drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and sing.
Can't hear ya, sing it. I'm
no
no.
longer a slave to fear.
For
I am a child of
One more
God.
time for my neighbors. I'm no
Longer a slave to fear. For I am a child of God.
This time for the city. I'm
No
no.
longer a slave to fear. For I am a child of God.
This time for the world as loud as you can.
I'm no longer a slave to fear. For I am a child of God.
We gotta like. Hey, so welcome back to the live stream or to the teaching portion of the live stream this week, guys. I'm really sad that we cannot be together for outdoor. That was the plan this morning, was to talk about a text that was going to allow us to even run like a little race and do some fun stuff outside, but we were unable to do that, but that's okay. We are going to continue with Corinthians and pick up where we were last week. And we left off last week talking about this idea of giving up our rights, our power for the sake of the gospel and what that means, and just putting the way of Jesus on display for the world. And one of Paul's last lines that we read last week was from verse 23 in chapter 9. It says, I do it all for the sake of the gospel, that I may share with them in its blessings. This was Paul's one thing. It was what he edited his entire life around. He's like, I do it all. Like, what's it? It is like everything. He did everything in his life around that he could win people, whether they were Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, weak, powerful. Like, he did everything he could to reach people. And so I think there's an element that a lot of us, like, we want to live that life out that way, don't we? Like, we want to bend our lives around the gospel and the kingdom, but we just don't. I mean, we have the intention to, and maybe we even do for a season, and we want to take care of the oppressed and the poor and the marginalized, the widow, the orphan, and we love the way that sounds, and it stirs our hearts, and we do it for a little while, and it just stops, right? Like, I think
Let me just ask you this question. What was one thing from last week to this week that you edited in your life? Like, what's one thing that you stopped doing and one thing that maybe you started doing? Or was it just simply, it was motivating and like, oh yeah, we need to do that and let's live our lives that way. See, I don't think any of us disagree with like living our lives for the sake of the kingdom. We want to be people who spend our lives bringing heaven to earth. It's the reality of that that's hard, right? I mean, it's difficult, it's painful, it's not easy to get through. It's just like we have this brief motivation to do it and then somewhere we lose it, and I get it. I mean, life sets in. Things happen, like we have kids and all of a sudden, we're drowning in diapers and in schedules and, how can we even go on a date when we're just trying to like survive as parents? Or maybe you're just drowning in schoolwork, or just COVID fears are setting in and like life sets in. And I think those of us who have these incredible intentions to live our lives for the kingdom and for the gospel find ourselves derailed. I mean, for me personally, I can just say setting out 10 years ago almost now to plant Red Door and saying, man, I'm going to bend my life around planting a church whose mission is to spend our lives bringing heaven to earth. And there was so much momentum in the beginning. There was so much motivation in the beginning. There was this novelty and it was new and fresh and exciting. But let me tell you, a decade in, there's moments where you're like, I don't know if I can keep going. I'm tired. I'm tired of friends that walk in my life and out of my life. I'm tired of people making really dumb choices and compromising themselves and others because of sin. I'm tired of losing friends to death. I'm tired of just plans not working out. And I think we just live in that frustration so often, where we have all of these dreams and desires to live out a kingdom life and to put the gospel on display, to bring heaven to earth. But the reality of that is just much more brutal and much more busy. And we find ourselves caught up with lesser things or with other things, and this one thing gets lost. And it seems like we get motivated for a moment, but then we lose that motivation and we run out of gas. And so we go looking for motivation. And some of you, you attend conferences so you can get motivated again, or you listen to podcasts and worship music. And we used to attend Sunday morning gatherings where it'd just be this motivating thing. And I can't tell you how many people would tell me oh man, I just need Sunday morning because it's the gas that fills me up. It's the motivation to keep going. And there's an element of that that's good and true. And we do find energy in coming together. But if that's what we're relying on, are these just constant needs for motivation, well, it's a depleting resource. It runs out, and it leaves the gospel as just a portion of our lives and not what we bend our lives around. And I think the question is how do we give up power continually? How do we give up our rights? How do we make the gospel and Jesus the thing of our lives when we constantly lose that motivation? One scholar I read in preparing for this text that we're going to be in today, verses 24, 25, 26, 27, he had this to say. He said, verses 24 to 27 fall on deaf ears in an age of hedonism, entertainment, and leisure. Almost every church competes each Sunday with television, local or national sporting events, and outdoor recreation, as pastors wonder who will show up that week. Getting believers to commit to activities, particularly ministries of visitation and outreach, at times other than Sunday morning, often defies the creativity of even the most innovative of leaders. Isn't that true? I think we were all okay, I can give myself to Sunday morning and we can have maybe a group weeknight, but anything more than two things, we start to feel the pressure. And we start to go, I don't know, because we see all the other things that we have. And I don't think the question is, well, how do you make everything in your life around the church? I think the question is, how does the kingdom become everything in your life? And how does everything you do start to be about the kingdom? That means when you show up at your kid's soccer game, or practice for that matter, or you go to the pool, or you're out in your yard, how do those moments become saturated and filled with the one thing, the it, that you bend your life around? And that's where I think we have to go, because how do we begin to edit our life around the gospel? And how do we become people who lay down our rights and our power on behalf of others and be people who will stick with this grind of bringing heaven to earth? And I think we realize that it just can't be motivation alone. And Paul, this is where he's going to go after having talked about this. He's going to explain this, and he goes to a sports analogy. Now, we got this awesome gym behind me, or workout room here at Fairfield High School. And, it just seemed like a fitting thing if we couldn't be outside together to find a great location to talk about this, because there's something about the sports metaphor that's just so on. And Paul's going to go into that. And you have to know that a big part of the Corinthian culture was built around sport. The Isthmian Games were a big deal to them. They were a part of the 4-year cycle known as the Olympiad. And 2 of the 4 years were given over to the Isthmian Games. And then in the first year, it was the Olympics. And then the second year was the Isthmian Games, and then the Nemean Games, and then again to the Isthmian Games, and then that would complete a 4-year Olympiad, always beginning with the Great Olympic Games held in Athens. Well, the Isthmian Games were held right there outside of Corinth at the isthmus that, if you remember back to some of our original teachings, that made Corinth a unique city. It was held there at that spot. And being a part of that Olympic thing, you have to know, I love the Olympics. I mean, love the Olympics. They are like a passion for me. And when the Olympics got booted this year and moved down to next year, I was a little crushed, to be honest with you. And in fact, we had this whole thing for Red Door planned out that we were going to do this summer of 2020 for the Olympic Games. We were going to hold the Great Backyard Olympics. And it was going to be this massive thing of backyard games and Olympic challenges and gold medals. I mean, legit gold medal, not really. But, we were going to have some fun with this. And, I was going to have an opening ceremonies party at my house like I do for every Olympics, both summer and winter. I mean, I don't care what it is. I love the Olympics. I'll watch curling at 3 a.m. in the morning. I love the Olympics. And you got to understand, I'm not like an American flag waving guy. I'm not against it. I'm just not like somebody that does that. But mark the Olympics, I'm painting my face. I'm draping an American flag over my, it's my cape. And we are on, and I am USA, USA. It is on. Yeah, I'm the person singing the national anthem every time the flag goes up with my painted face and just having a ball with that whole thing. And that Olympic spirit, or that thing, was a big part of Corinth and where they were. And the Isthmian Games were second only to the Olympic Games. And certainly while Paul was there, we know that there was one of those years that he was in Corinth, there was the Isthmian Games. Him being a tent maker, it played out massively for him economically, because all these people were coming from out of town, and Paul would have been able to use his skills as a tent maker to make tents for the people who were coming in from out of town to be there. And so that was just a massive economic boom for him, and something that he was able to do. But the Isthmian Games are also famous for their pine wreath crown that the winner would get. It was this special crown that was unique to the Isthmian Games, and the winner of those races would get those crowns. And so Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 9:24, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it." Now, this is a metaphor that Paul's giving about running, and he's saying only one receives the prize. Now, don't press this metaphor too hard, because it's not saying that there's only going to be one winner in this whole thing. What Paul's saying is that that prize pushes the runner. And you and I, when it comes to this Christian life and to this thing of spending our lives bringing heaven to earth, we need to run like we want to win. Now, one of the things about the Isthmian Games that was also unique is there wasn't a gold, silver, bronze. There's no first, second, third. There was just the winner. It was like Ricky Bobby. If you ain't first, you're last. And that was kind of for them the way it was. There was that winner. And what Paul's saying here is that the Christian life, it's not a stroll in the park. It's a race. It's something that you're invited to step into. Like there is something going on here that means you're not supposed to sit on the sidelines and watch. You're a participant. And it's not a stroll, it's a run, it's a grind. And so Paul's going to give us two things here that I think explain how we can stop this cycle of like getting jacked up for a little while and then losing motivation, jumping into some sort of Christian mission and then falling off. And he's going to give us, I think, these two things that are critical that apply to this sports metaphor. And so he says in 25, every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, right? That's the special pine wreath crown. But we, an imperishable. And so here's the first thing that Paul talks about. This is going to take discipline. Like he's going to give us two things, and the first one's discipline. And so he said that, look at the athlete, because athletes exercise amazing self-control. Like they bring everything into check. And Paul will say later in verse 27 that I discipline my body and bring it under control. And the thing that we need to understand about this is that either you are going to discipline your body and bring it under control, or it will control you. And that's what every athlete understands, that they're going to maintain self-control and maintain discipline to get their body to do what they want their body to do and not have their body rebel against them. I mean, anybody who's tried to run 100 yards after you haven't run for years realizes that your body is going to rebel against you as you push it. And so an athlete, they're the ones who say, no, I know my body is going to move towards decay and towards rebellion. And so I'm going to discipline my body and bring it under control. And so that's what Paul's saying, is that your body, it's going to rebel. Your mind is going to say, I want to be about this, but your body's going to say no. And he said, this takes discipline for us. It's not easy. It's not like a stroll in the park. It's like a race. And so, I think any of you have tried to set weight loss goals. You realize this isn't easy. The second you say, okay, I'm going to do this, all of a sudden your body starts to rebel and you feel that. And so the athlete, they realize that, he says, they practice self-control in all things. That self-control is not just one area of your life. They see the interconnectivity of it. That you can't just practice self-control in physical things and miss out on that on spiritual things or mental things. The real athletes, they put themselves under grueling circumstances and grueling tests. And they see the connection between their oxygen intake and their food intake and their cardio levels, and they're measuring and testing everything to bring it under control. And Paul's saying we need to take inventory of our lives, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, marital, and look at those things and take them under control. And so, all the things we want to do that we have the freedom and the right to do, they have to give way to this race. Like there's a lot of things that you have the freedom to do and the rights to do, but Paul's going, yeah, but we give those away because of the sake of this race that we're called into. And so we are going to subject our bodies to things that it does not want to do, that you actually are free to do, but your body must be denied. And I think any attempt to start talking about discipline, some of us start to go, whoa, like this is a return to like some medieval Middle Ages thing. And we're like, I don't want anything to do with that. And Paul's like, no, this thing that Jesus is calling you and I into, it takes discipline. And you will not be a person who spends their life bringing heaven to earth, who gives up their rights and powers consistently and continually if you don't maintain discipline. See, motivation's just not enough. You need more. And the first thing is discipline. And I think, guys, this is also why we need a community of people around us. Because this thing of discipline, it's just so hard that you need other people that are in this with you. People are texting you, checking in on you, talking to you. It's why group is so important, because discipline is best when we move together. Because I think somewhere we started treating people like spectators instead of participants, or each other like spectators instead of participants in the race. And we're like the person who sits there and watches the Olympics munching our bonbons and snacks and going, oh yeah, that's cool. I'd like to do that one day. We sit back at church and sip our lattes. Same way, participants. So maybe this comes as a surprise to you, but you are not called to be a spectator. You are called to be a participant, and you are called to step into this race and discipline your body and your mind. But that's because there's a prize. And that's what Paul's reminding us, that there is this prize that is coming. And so when he says this, he says that they do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. And he cuts it off. He doesn't say an imperishable wreath. Like, we're not running after some sort of everlasting eternal wreath, but we run after the imperishable, the things to come. And so Paul's actually kind of setting the tone for what's about to come in Corinthians. A little bit later in chapter 15, he's going to use that same word imperishable 5 times to speak of the resurrection life that we are going to be given. That this is the thing that we are running after and pursuing, is the imperishable, is the resurrection. And 1 Corinthians 15:54, he says, when the perishable, that's us, puts on the imperishable, that's what he's talking about with this crown, and the mortal puts on immortality, then shall come to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. Just a question for you. How many of you, the thing you're running after is perishable? Like, what are you running after? Like, what's that thing that you're chasing and pursuing with your life? Is it something that one day is just going to be eaten away or given away? Or is it something that even death itself cannot overcome? And that's where it says in James 1, blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. See, I think that's why that's called the crown of life, is this idea that what you are going to be offered is life, and you are going to wear life itself like a crown. It's not like you're going to be given necessarily like a physical crown. I don't know, maybe that'll happen. I don't think that's what it is. What it's saying, I believe, this crown of life, is that your reward, your thing that you're given, is life itself, and that you will taste it and see it and know it, life and life to the full. That's the reward that you are pursuing with your life for yourself and for those around you. It's what Paul bent his life around and edited his life around, was he never lost track of that prize. So Paul gives us almost like a now and a not yet. There's discipline now, and there's the prize that's not yet. That's the two things that guide us and guard us through this whole thing of life that threatens to just get us to quit, to stop, to drop out from the race. And I think we need to know that anything worth pursuing, it's going to take self-control, discipline, and it's going to take keeping our eyes on that prize and keeping a focus on what's coming. It's not going to come because you click a like button on Facebook, or you show up to a march once, or you show up to some church services every now and then. I think at Red Door, we've been really good as a church about talking about that prize. Like, we've kept our attention that direction. I would say I don't think we've been as good about talking about the disciplines that we are called into. And it's something that we as a church need to find a way to do well. And I want to encourage you to step into both together, that we can't lose sight of needing both of these things. It's going to demand so much more from us. It's costly, challenging, it's a grueling race, and it is a fight to the finish, because the alternative, guys, is just to live and run aimlessly. And that's what he says. What happens when you lose these two things? Look at verse 26 and 27. He says, so I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air, but I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. Now, this is like a hilarious picture, like in a way. Like it's a comedy of like imagining somebody just running around, like not knowing which way they're going, or like just flailing the air. You're like, as a boxer. I mean, like that literally, there's a comedy picture in that we're supposed to see. But the comedy reveals a tragedy that too many of us, too many of you live your life aimlessly. You don't have discipline and you don't have your eye on the prize. And here's the deal. Maybe you have one. Like some of you don't have discipline, and so you run around aimlessly and pointlessly, and you're just going after whatever thing comes next, whatever the next big wave, the next big movement, the next big thing, and you're like all about that thing. But you don't have discipline, but you're like seeking pride. Maybe some of you, like you have discipline, and you're doing the rigorous thing day by day by day by day, but you forgot about the prize. You lost what you were moving for, and you don't even know why you're doing the things you're doing now. And that's the thing, is that that you end up aimless, and you end up in a place of just tragedy. And so, do you find yourself running around in circles, and has this faith thing for you just become another thing that you're trying out for a bit of time? Do you feel aimless? What are you running after? What are you fighting for? Paul would come to the end of his life, and he'd be writing to Timothy, who was like his protege. He called his son. And he said to him this is probably the last letter he wrote. He said in 2 Timothy 4, 6, and 7, "Hey, Timothy, for I am already being poured out like a drink offering, and the time for my departure is near. But I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race, and I have kept the faith." See, Paul's looking back on his life, and he's seeing that this thing was a grind, and it was a race. It wasn't a sprint. It was a race that was a long lifetime race. And he's saying, I kept the race. I finished it, and I kept fighting. I didn't quit. And so I just want to encourage you guys in one sense that there's going to come a day when you're going to look back on your life, and you're either going to look back and I think mourn because you realized you quit. You stopped. You stopped fighting. You stopped running, or you ran after a lot of things aimlessly. And you spent your life chasing down windmills like Don Quixote, going after whatever the next thing was. Or you can look back at your life and say, I didn't quit. It was hard. It was grueling. But I fought the fight and I finished the race and I kept the faith. And that's what we are called to keep fighting, to keep running. And I think we need these two things of discipline and the prize set before us day by day. That's what keeps us from stopping in this thing. And so I want to encourage you to find a way to continue to focus on the prize and to find a way to continue to step into disciplines. And so, get back in the race, or start the race, and run like you want to win, because you've disciplined yourself and you've kept your eyes on that prize. Don't sit in the stands. And so I think it's this, that as we step into the race and we start participating in what we are called to, that there will be those who watch the Olympics and are inspired and motivated, and they see the athletes doing what they do. I think may we, as kingdom people, be representatives of the world that is to come, of that future kingdom. May we step into that race, and may they see us. May we, as we move forward, sing the anthem to our King with his banner raised over us. And may we put him on display for the whole entire world to see. And may they know that there is a God in heaven, because we have chosen to bend our lives around that and never stop running and never stop fighting. May you be blessed, church.
All right, guys, we hope you enjoyed Red Door's live stream this week. It's just such a gift that we are able to still gather together, even if it is remotely. And we are looking forward to connecting with you at Flubs or maybe via Zoom with the study that Zach talked about. Don't forget to check out Christmas in July on the website. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.